Sandra couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled as John gently placed the golden key into her palm. Jerry stood on her other side, beaming with pride, while a crowd of neighbors, local journalists, and state officials clapped and cheered under the large white canopy set up in front of a brand new mansion in Lekki. "Mama," John said, his voice cracking. "This house, it's yours." The moment froze. Sandra's eyes widened, her lips quivered. And then, the tears came slow at first, then uncontrollable. She looked at the boys now, the men they had become. Sharp suits, clean-shaven, eyes full of gratitude. How did it come to this? How did a childless, mocked, and widowed trader from Mushin become the proud mother of Nigeria's most celebrated petroleum engineers? As the guests cheered again, someone shouted, "Tell us how it happened." Sandra stepped up to the small podium, still shaking. She took a deep breath, smiled, and began. But before a single word left her lips, her eyes caught the flash of a memory-dusty streets, the smell of tomatoes, and two little boys on crutches, looking up at her with pleading eyes. And just like that, her mind drifted back to the day everything changed. 2 years earlier, the market road was hot that morning. The sun was already high, and Sandra's slippers slapped against the dry, dusty path as she walked. Her wrapper was faded, her blouse a little too loose, and the small plastic bowl she carried held the last 700 naira worth of okra and dried pepper she had managed to sell since dawn. The other traders barely noticed her. They were too busy shouting prices or laughing with their customers. Sandra moved quietly, with the weariness of someone used to being invisible. She was 40, a widow, no children, and in her world, that meant forgotten. Her husband, Chukwudi, had died suddenly from a stroke 2 years before. His family had taken everything, his small electronics shop, their single-room apartment in Ikotun, even her clothes. They said she was cursed, that any woman who could live 10 years with a man and still not give him a child must be the reason he died. Sandra didn't fight them. She just left. She began trading vegetables at OK Arfa Market, waking every morning at 4 a.m. to trek and restock her basket. But even in her new neighborhood, the gossip followed her. Women whispered. Children mocked. She's the one with the dead husband and no children. Even at 40, no man wants her. She must have eaten all her children in the womb. Each word left a scar. Each night, when the world went quiet, Sandra would lie on her thin mattress and cry softly, afraid of the silence and what it told her about her life. But that day, that scorching day on her way to Ketu Market, she saw them. 2 small boys, no more than 5, sitting side by side on a broken wooden bench near a roadside kiosk. They looked identical, same round faces, same shaved heads. They wore torn clothes. One had a slipper on, the other had none. Both held small crutches leaning beside them. They weren't begging, they weren't speaking, just staring blankly at the passers-by. Everyone walked past. Some even looked away. Nobody wanted to see the pain. But Sandra stopped. She didn't know why. Something tugged at her heart. She knelt in front of them. "Sweet boys," she said softly. "Where are your parents?" The one on the left looked up. His eyes were wide, too wise for a child. "Our parents died," he said, 7 months ago, in a car accident." Sandra gasped. "You were in the car?" The second boy nodded. "We lived, but our legs didn't." The first boy spoke again, this time more quietly. "People said we are witches, that we used our parents for sacrifice." Sandra felt her chest tighten. "No one wants us," he continued. "We've been sleeping under that bench. Mama, can you be our mummy? We'll help you wash plates. Clean the house, please." Tears filled her eyes. She couldn't speak. She wrapped both arms around them and pulled them close. Her hands stroked their dusty heads. They smelled of earth, sweat, and something else, hope. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you can come with me." The boys looked at each other in shock, then smiled. They held her hands each on either side, and together they limped with her toward the market. The traders stared. Some laughed. Others shook their heads. "Another witch gathering witchlings. She can't even feed herself. Now she wants to add 2 crippled children. But Sandra didn't care. Her hands were full, her heart fuller. That evening, she made yam porridge with crayfish and palm oil. She tore her last 2 pieces of dried fish and gave it all to the boys. They ate hungrily. Their tiny hands held the spoons like they hadn't used one in months. Sandra watched them, her eyes wet again. "John," the first boy said, pointing to himself. "Jerry," said the second. She nodded slowly. "My sons," she whispered. "My boys." From that moment, life wasn't the same. The next day, Sandra took them to a small specialist orthopedic clinic in Ijesha. The doctor said their bones weren't beyond repair. "It will take physiotherapy, ma'am, and patience. But they may walk again." Sandra used her entire market savings. She even sold her spare wrapper. For weeks, she walked the boys to the clinic every day. One morning, something happened. John stood up on his own. The nurses gasped. Jerry followed 2 days later. By the end of the month, the crutches were gone. Sandra cried again that night, but for the first time, the tears were of joy. Life was not easy, but it was full. The boys now walking helped her in the market. They carried her baskets, called out to customers, swept her room, and every night they kissed her forehead and said, "Thank you, Mama." Their laughter returned. And Sandra? She laughed too. The pain didn't disappear, but the silence did. And then came another twist. Something happened that made Sandra question everything again, something she never expected. But that's where the next chapter begins. The rain poured that morning like the sky was trying to wash away the past. Sandra stood at the window of her tiny one-room apartment in Mushin, watching the brown water rise along the edge of the road. Her boys, John and Jerry, were still sleeping, curled together on the mat like they always did. The room was cramped. A single bed frame stood by the wall. Its mattress so thin, Sandra gave it to the boys while she slept on the floor. Their clothes hung on one rusty nail. The air smelled of wet earth and kerosene. But somehow, the room felt alive. A knock shattered the moment. 3 quick bangs, sharp and angry. Sandra wiped her hands on her wrapper and opened the door. It was Mama Uche, the landlord's sister, holding an umbrella like a sword. "I said it. I told my brother. You have turned this place into an orphanage." Sandra blinked. "Auntie, I don't understand. You brought those cursed boys here. You didn't tell anybody where you got them from. Are they even your real children?" "They're mine now," Mama Uche hissed. "That's your problem. Ever since you brought them here, my cat died, my generator spoilt, and now it's been raining non-stop. Tell me they're not witches." Behind her, neighbors peeked from their windows. Some snickered. Some watched in silence. John and Jerry stood quietly behind Sandra now. They had heard it all. Again, Sandra stepped outside, her voice steady but shaking. "If you want us to leave, we will leave. But you will not call my sons names." Mama Uche was about to speak again when Jerry walked up and held Sandra's hand. "Mama, it's okay," he whispered. "We're used to it." But Sandra wasn't. That night, she packed their things, what little they had, and moved them to a friend's kiosk behind a closed tailoring shop. It was smaller, no windows, but it was quiet. That was how their new chapter began, in the back of someone else's store, eating rice and groundnut oil for dinner, reading by candlelight. But the pain didn't break them. It built something stronger. 2 years passed, and the boys grew taller, sharper, wiser. They were now 12, quick with their mouths and quicker with their brains. Sandra had enrolled them in a local public school, and every evening they came back with books and excitement in their voices. One night, after a long day of selling onions and peppers under the bridge, Sandra returned to find the boys waiting with a surprise. They had made a makeshift card out of an old carton piece. In marker, it read, "Congratulations, Mama. Your sons came honest and twined in class." Sandra dropped her basket and collapsed into their arms. "I don't need anything else in this life," she said through tears. But that was only the beginning. Word began to spread. The headmaster of their school called Sandra in one day. He was a tall, fair-skinned man with glasses too big for his nose. "Madam Sandra," he said, "I don't know how you did it, but your boys, they are something else." Sandra sat quietly, unsure what to say. They've won the state quiz competition, he continued, beating even private schools. Now the governor wants to see them. Sandra gasped. Wait, governor? Me? The headmaster smiled. No, Ma. The twins. Sandra laughed nervously. Oh, okay. That makes more sense. The next week, the unthinkable happened. 2 official cars pulled up at the school gate, sirens wailing. Men in suits came out, and in front of the entire assembly ground, the twins were called up. John wore his usual clean but patched uniform. Jerry's collar was torn, but they stood tall, proud, unshaken. The governor's aide handed them a document. The man turned to the crowd and announced, by the power of the executive office, the Lagos state government hereby awards full university scholarships to Master John and Master Jerry Okonkwo for their outstanding academic performance and contribution to the state's future. Sandra, who had been standing quietly in the back of the crowd, let out a loud sob. Everyone turned. The aide smiled. Is that their mother? John and Jerry ran to her, hugging her on both sides. One journalist clicked a photo that would later go viral across social media. The caption, "The widow who raised greatness." But as life turned, it also tested. University came with pressure. Sandra feared she wouldn't be able to support their upkeep, even if the tuition was covered. She increased her trade, selling roasted plantain at night and Zobo drinks at bus stops in the morning. John and Jerry, now in University of Lagos, came home only on weekends, and even then, they insisted on helping her slice onions or clean the coolers. Then came the day that changed everything. A letter arrived. Jerry opened it and screamed. John snatched it, read it, then stared at Sandra with tears in his eyes. "Mama, we've been selected by Chevron," he said, "for their international trainee program. We're leaving for Houston next month." Sandra dropped her plate. Houston, America. The twins fell to their knees and held her legs. "We didn't do this alone, Mama. You made this happen." But even then, the world wasn't finished with its surprises. Because just 1 year later, they returned with something Sandra never expected. A gift that would not only shock her, but the entire community that once mocked her. And that moment was coming. The cars, the cameras, the housewarming, the keys in her hand. But before that could happen, one last twist would test the love between a mother and her sons. Because someone from Sandra's past was coming back. Someone who wasn't ready to let go. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind Sandra used to sit outside and peel oranges while waiting for her boys to come home. But today, the house felt too quiet. John and Jerry had traveled for a Chevron retreat in Abuja. Sandra, now 65, stayed in the new mansion alone for the first time. She had never known silence could feel so heavy. Then ding, the front gate bell rang. Sandra peered through the camera monitor but saw no one. Strange. She stepped outside, her slippers brushing softly against the tiled floor of her compound. And then she saw him. A tall, bony man leaning against the gatepost. His face was partially hidden beneath a cap, his clothes dusty like someone who had travelled a long way. Sandra squinted. Her heart did something strange. "Can I help you?" she asked. The man looked up and suddenly, her knees buckled. It was Emeka, her late husband's brother. The same man who had dragged her out of their house after Chukwudi's burial. The one who called her barren, useless, a bad luck charm. Sandra's hands trembled. What are you doing here?" Emeka smiled weakly. "Sandra, please. I heard what the twins did for you. I had nowhere else to go. Business failed. My wife left. I'm sorry." She blinked. Was this a dream? "I have nothing, Sandra. I thought maybe you could help me." Help? This man had called her a witch, said she cursed his brother, took away everything she owned, and now he was standing here, with broken sandals and empty eyes, asking for mercy. Something inside her twisted. She thought of the nights she slept hungry, the mornings she begged customers to buy just one more pepper, the whispers, the stares, the shame. And then she thought of John and Jerry. of how she had chosen love when the world offered nothing but pain. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what to say." Imika stepped forward, but she raised a hand. "I'll think about it. That's all I can promise." He nodded, eyes misty. Sandra watched him walk away slowly, disappearing down the road like a forgotten ghost. But deep inside, she knew something had shifted. This wasn't just a visit. This was a storm returning, and she had no idea how hard it would hit. The next morning, Sandra sat at the edge of her bed, clutching the edge of her wrapper. She hadn't slept. Emika's face kept flashing in her mind, those tired eyes, the hollow voice, the way he had once dragged her out like garbage. She was still lost in thought when the mansion gate opened with a low hum. The twins were back. Their laughter filled the house like light. "Mama!" John called, dropping his duffel bag. "We brought something for you." Jerry held up a blue box wrapped in silver ribbon. But as Sandra reached for it, her voice cracked. "Boys, your Uncle Emeka came yesterday." The room fell silent. Jerry's smile faded. "That man? What did he want?" "He said he lost everything. He's asking for help." John scoffed. "After what he did to you?" "I know," she said quietly. "But something about him. He looked broken." The twins exchanged a glance. Jerry sat beside her. "Mama, you have a soft heart. Too soft." Sandra tried to smile. "Maybe. But don't forget, if I didn't have a soft heart, I wouldn't have picked you up from that street." That silenced them. Later that evening, something worse arrived. A brown envelope was delivered to the gate. Inside was a legal letter with Emeka's name at the bottom. He was suing for rights to the mansion, claiming it as family inheritance built from the bloodline of his late brother. Sandra dropped the paper. Her hands trembled. "What bloodline?" she whispered. "The one that mocked me? Abandoned me?" The boys stood frozen. "Enough," John said. "We'll fight this." But Jerry's eyes were fixed on one detail in the letter line, claiming Sandra never formally adopted them. Technically, they had no papers proving they were hers. "We need to fix this," Jerry said. John nodded, jaw tight. "Tomorrow morning. First thing." Sandra watched them walk out, their steps faster than usual, shoulders squared. And for the first time in years, she felt the sting of fear again. If Emeka succeeded, could she lose everything? Worse, could she lose the only son she ever had? Outside, the sky darkened, and the storm finally broke. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, journalists, curious strangers. Everyone had heard the story by now about the widow, the twins, and the uncle who returned to claim what wasn't his. Sandra sat quietly on the wooden bench, hands folded in her lap, heart pounding like a drum. John and Jerry sat on either side of her in their sharp black suits, faces calm but eyes blazing. Emeka stood across the aisle with his lawyer, a thin man with a sharp tie and even sharper tongue. "My client," the lawyer began, "is the only surviving blood relative of the late Chukwudi Okonkwo. This property, built by his nephews, belongs to the Okonkwo family legacy. Since the twins were never legally adopted by the defendant, their claim is invalid. We request immediate handover of the property to its rightful family heir." Gasps filled the room. Sandra's throat tightened. The judge turned to her. "Madam Sandra, do you have anything to say?" She stood slowly. "Your Honor, I don't have big words. I don't even have papers. But I have something more powerful: memories, scars, and love." She looked at the twins. These boys were left in the dust. No name, no family. No one cared if they lived or died. But I did. I wiped their tears. I fed them when I had nothing. I carried them to the clinic when their legs failed. They became my sons, not through a lawyer, but through love. The courtroom was silent. Then Jerry stood. "Your Honor, we may not have had documents then, but we do now." He handed over a brown file. Inside were signed and sealed legal adoption papers, backdated and registered, thanks to a lawyer friend they had met during their scholarship program. "We fixed what Mama never had the chance to," John added. "So, by law and by love, we are her sons." The judge nodded, flipping through the file. After a long pause, she said, This court recognizes John and Jerry Okonkwo as the legal adopted sons of Sandra Okonkwo. The claim by Mr. Emeka is hereby dismissed. The gavel slammed. Applause erupted. Sandra sank into her seat, tears falling freely. Outside the court, cameras flashed. A journalist ran up with a mic. "Mama Sandra, what do you want the world to know?" She looked at her sons and smiled. "Kindness is not foolishness. It's faith. I planted love when I had nothing, and see what grew." Later that evening, the mansion gates opened again. Only this time, it wasn't strangers walking through. It was John and Jerry, leading Sandra by the hand, just like the first day they met. They entered the living room, where a golden plaque now hung. It read, "To the mother who chose us." Sandra touched the words, "Overcome." But then Jerry pulled out one more surprise, an envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside was a ticket, a plane ticket. "Mama," John said, grinning, "we're taking you to Houston." Sandra gasped, hand to her chest. Her journey wasn't ending. It was only just beginning. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.